Today is the 4th of July, Independence Day, and so my brief message is foundational. Upon the adoption of our nation's Constitution, Mrs. Powell, a resident of Philadelphia, approached Benjamin Franklin and asked, "Well, Doctor, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy?" Dr. Franklin replied, "A republic," and thoughtfully added these words, "if you can keep it." The partisan division of 1787 was between Democratic Republicans, led by the likes of Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, and Federalists led by Alexander Hamilton. The Republicans of the day defended democracy, opposed aristocracy, and accused the Federalists of being monarchists. The aristocratic Federalist Party opposed monarchy as fiercely as any Republican, but couldn't escape the label. It was their blue-blooded aristocratic heritage that made them unacceptable to Republicans, whose strong preference was for commoners in government, Democrats. The Federalists just disappeared without any real successors, but the aristocratic ideology reemerged within the Democratic Republican Party. Old-line New England Federalists like John Quincy Adams and Daniel Webster reemerged to form the National Republican Party, which almost immediately was succeeded by the Whig Party, which later became the Republican Party. Old-school Jeffersonians formed the Democratic Party to support policies favorable to agrarians and commoners living in the frontier states and the Old South. I left a lot of history out to focus on my own issues, which are democracy versus aristocracy. If the truth were told, early Democrats were liberal in their support of a laboring class of unchurched Americans without property, but unwilling to support policies that kept black slaves in bondage. The early Republican Party was organized specifically to oppose slavery, or at least the expansion of slavery. But they happily embraced banking policies that made most Americans interest-paying wage slaves, and they worried about odd things like whether a person was born in or out of wedlock. Both parties gladly embraced militant policies of expansion for white Americans that were hostile to Native Americans. You can't really put on a blue jersey or a red jersey without inheriting the good, the bad, and the ugly of your team's party history. I am a progressive. I learn for the past as it was, live in the present as it is, and hope for the better future we can have. This is what I hope you will take away from my short reflection on the foundational history of our democratic republic. The men we call our founders were inching forward along a timeline of progress. They were struggling with the problematic nature of class relationships where one class of people were masters and all others were servants. Today is Independence Day, and we remember the day our nation's founders cast off the shackles of bondage to an aristocratic monarch and formed a democratic republic. But the struggle for liberty from bondage did not stop there, and that struggle has been complicated by dimensions of gender, nationality, race, and religion. Today is Independence Day, and we should celebrate the progress made by that generation and in generations since. But we have not arrived at a place in history where we can afford to stand still. There is something stubborn about disadvantage that follows the disadvantaged people from one generation to the next. Freed slaves thought to make something of themselves, but ending slavery did not end the master and servant relationship. It merely changed the relationship of owner and owned to one of owner and owes. Everyone who owes understands this. For most people, their labor is not voluntary. Many people find paid work but still live in poverty or precariously close to poverty. And if people do not find paid work, they must live in poverty, often on the very margin where water, electricity, and basic telecommunications are luxuries. Most of the voters in my district will not consider themselves poor, but almost everyone feels squeezed into a precarious economic circumstances. None live more precariously than those who have taken on college debt, whether they are the student or the parents of the student. Poor blacks in the Old South rented the land in a sharecropping scheme that kept them forever in debt to their landlords. Poor whites in Appalachia were forced to rent the shovels they used to mine coal and were in perpetual debt to the company store. And if you want a job today, you will have to borrow the money to pay for an education first, in what can only be seen as a successor program to those that kept Southern blacks and Appalachian whites in debt bondage. If I am so fortunate as to be elected and sent to represent State House District 56 in Lansing, I will do my level best to sponsor or co-sponsor legislation that will address the problem of college debt for both students and their parents. I don't know exactly what the program looks like or how it's paid for, but college should be tuition-free. Maybe we start with extending tuition-free education through the associate's level or technical vocational equivalent level. Paying off student debts for Michigan students and their parents might be a bigger challenge. Federally guaranteed and other private loans are problematic. Maybe Michigan should refinance student debt for residents at very low interest rates and then forgive some or all of that debt with a tax credit. Whether you are white or black, male or female, young or old, I would like to resolve at least this one mechanism that works to keep everyday people in the precarious condition of debt just because they did the responsible thing and finished school to the level that would make them employable. I am Ernie Whiteside. I am a Democratic candidate in the upcoming primary election for State Representative District 56, and I am asking for your vote on August 4th.